Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly show of Classroom Without Walls. My name is AI. I'm the host of this weekly live streaming show. You can also listen to us on the traditional audio-only podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and different places. On this show, I interview leading social media, digital marketers, business leaders, entrepreneurs to come here to share with us their best practices so that we can future-proof our business. And today, we are talking about video conferencing and how to master online video calls. And right now, we are in the middle of this really unfortunate global pandemic, and all of our face-to-face meetings and conferences are replaced with online Zoom calls. And so how many people are feel fatigued and stressed. And so in this interview today, you are going to learn some tested and proven ways that can really help you. You can apply right away to master online conference, not only survive, but actually thrive throughout your online video conferencing experience. And join me live is my dear friend, Chuck. And Moran, so Chuck is the creator of Online Video Mastery, and he's also a digital marketer. And in fact, that's where he and I got connected a few years ago at a really big social media marketing conference. And Chuck, his specialty is in website design and has been in this business for a few decades. And so we have a lot to learn from Chuck, especially his online video mastery course and what he teaches his client and working with them to really help understand the science behind Zoom fatigue. And most importantly, what are some ways that we can apply right away to overcome our Zoom fatigue and to master online video conference. And we are live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Periscope, on Twitch, on all the places. So if you are live with us right now, let me know in the comment section where you are joining us live, social media-wise and geographically speaking. Really excited to have you here with us. And Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am really, really, really thrilled to be here with you. You and I interviewed when we were in our opposite seats recently. And I really appreciate all the knowledge bombs that you dropped on me during that interview. And I hope in this case, I can return the favor to you and your listeners.
Yeah, I'm sure. Everyone, we are in for a treat because we're all doing so many online video conference calls. So share with us, Chuck, as I mentioned earlier, you have been in digital marketing for a few decades and your specialty is really website design. So what inspired you to kind of, transition or develop an additional line of business to found and start online video mastery?
Yeah, thanks. My history in advertising, marketing, and related fields goes back to the 70s, believe it or not. I know I don't look that old. But I wanted to just say that one of the coolest things about being alive today is how easy it is to keep up with the tools as we go through time. And so when I started way back in those days, we had, twin coat rubber cement and galleys and waxers and all that stuff. So I go back to those early dinosaur days. But recently, since the mid 90s, I've been building websites primarily. And I have a company called Bald Guy Studio. And the way we got into online video mastery and developing that was that we were asked to build a website for an artist in Maryland. And we worked on it starting about this time last year, and launched it just before the COVID hit. And so the way I got from website design into the Zoom training that we've developed was that my client, this artist in Maryland, his abilities to earn a living along with the people who he was working with, is the artists that paint with him, suddenly came to a screeching halt because COVID hit and everything shut down. So there was a arts park that they all taught at, and suddenly they weren't allowed to go there anymore because of COVID. So because I've been in communication so long, I was introduced to the executive director at Glen Echo Arts and Culture Park, and she hired us to write a Zoom training for the instructors to help them get online. So we were able to solve that problem. We also wrote a scaled down training for the students so that they could learn how to take classes online. And that helped usher everybody in that art park into this brand new crazy world that we're all experiencing right now.
I love it. I love, one thing I love about, fellow entrepreneurs is where other people see problems, we see opportunities. I love how you tap into this and launch your own business. I love it. So share with us, you have been doing this for quite some time. What are some like common mistakes that people are making regarding doing Zoom calls or maybe, Microsoft Teams, like generally speaking, online video conferencing calls?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. First of all, I think that people make a mistake of thinking that they can bring the in-person experience online, and that they need to do that as much as possible. It's just almost impossible. There are certain industries and certain functions, classrooms, for instance, maybe tap dance, dance instruction and that kind of thing, that you can kind of make it move online pretty well, but for a lot of people it just fails to a certain extent. So I think we have to realize that it's just not going to work in every single case, and that it's okay. It really is okay that it's not going to work that well online. So let's not expect productivity to be what it was in person. So, if you're used to working in a cubicle at a company, let's say you're the boss, right? And you're used to getting your annual report out, and you're used to getting your financials done on time and that kind of thing. That productivity comes from being centrally located in a lot of cases. And so when it moves online, they're just naturally going to be deficits, not just around Zoom fatigue, but just deficits of technology that are caused by technology. So yeah, we're all in a brand new world. So I honestly think that because of this new world, we're all in it together. We've all been thrown into it against our will, in a sense, and that we need to really relax, call on our creativity, and think about this as an opportunity for growth.
Absolutely.
I think that's really the best. Realize that we're doing the best that we can given the circumstances that we have.
Totally. I'm curious, when you are saying, people are trying to duplicate in-person experience through the Zoom or whatever platform they're using, what do you mean by that? What exactly are people doing? Can you kind of specify that for us?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a couple of examples. I conducted an interview with a dance instructor who has a dance studio here in Charlottesville, Virginia, where I am. And when COVID hit, they had to close their studio, and they teach kids from early childhood up through teenage years. And so if the kids were used to coming into the dance studio and learning from teachers in person, and then suddenly COVID hit and they're having to work at home, there are just so many hurdles that have to be overcome. What from the facilitator side, what does she use for a camera? What does she use for audio? How does she present herself online? How much of her body should she show? Should she have a separate camera set up to show her feet while she's teaching? And then on the students' end of things, especially with the little kids, the parents want to do as well as they can for their kids, but there are technological hurdles on their side as well. So, for instance, a facilitator, a dance teacher in this case, if she's doing some kind of contemporary movements, and she's got a classroom now that's fitting in a box this big, right, on her laptop, she has to go up to the screen to see what little Sally's doing. So everything is different about this, and that's why I think we do need to take our time and adjust as well as we can. Now, of course, we're being pushed hard because of economics. This particular dance instructor had to move online because that was the only way she could continue to earn a living and keep her studio open. And by the way, she's been very successful at it.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to go like deeper, unpack this a little bit. I mean, I have been teaching online, doing my like live streaming for quite a few years. I almost forgot how exhausting this is. But now, as I hear people about this online teaching is actually quite exhausting, really reminds me a few years ago when I first started teaching online, it is way, 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 way more exhausting than an in-person class. And so if you do like a face-to-face meeting, like, 3 meetings a day versus teaching 3 classes or having 3 Zoom meetings, video Zoom meetings a day, energy level is totally different. So I know you actually have an ebook. So please do share with us where we can get a copy of this really powerful, like information value packed ebook. So in that ebook, you actually talked about the science behind Zoom or online video conferencing call fatigue. So can you unpack that for us? What is the science telling us why we're feeling so exhausted by doing online video conferencing calls?
It's a great question, and people can pick up a copy. It's free at this point. We're probably going to start charging for it fairly soon, but anyone can just go to onlinevideomastery.com. That's right there on the screen, onlinevideomastery.com. And right at the top of the page, there's a sign-up form, and that will get you access to our Smart Facilitators Guide to Crushing Zoom Fatigue. And we go into 3 sections in that book. One is about the brain science and how difficult it is and why Zoom fatigue is so tiring. And then how it's costing your organization in terms of productivity. And then the last section, we go into some solutions. So I really do hope people hop over there and get that. That will, of course, put you on our email list, but that's a good thing for you because we will be continuously sharing tips and tricks so that as we move through this new world, people are able to keep up with some good ideas for preventing Zoom fatigue and making the most of this new world that we're in. So a couple of interesting things. The Zoom fatigue really does come from what our brains are used to. So we really don't have any real developed brain history, if you will, of dealing with this online world that we're in now. That's been the problem. So before the pandemic, I've read that roughly 2/3 of all social interactions were face-to-face, 2/3, and not anymore. Now almost everything that we do, work, conversation, book clubs, dinner parties, joking around at the gym, those things have all disappeared or moved online. So that's left us yearning for social connection. I mean, I know everybody on this call can relate to that in some way or another. Our social structure is based on being in, tribes back in the days. And then recently, we have meetings and these gigantic conferences where you and I met, where we get to be around each other and pick up a lot of verbal and nonverbal cues from each other. Online, so much of that is stripped away. It's just absolutely stripped away. This was an interesting stat too. So back when the COVID hit, and people just naturally jumped onto Zoom. And yes, there are other platforms, of course. Google and Microsoft have their own platforms. There are probably new ones popping up. There's probably a new one while we're talking. But just in April of 2020, there were 2 trillion minutes of Zoom activity logged. 2 trillion minutes. So people wanted to get back to this, in-person sort of activity that we're so used to, but it just wasn't going to work. So one of the quotes that I have got here, let me just check over my notes. Compared to face-to-face, texting and using social media, energy use during a Zoom call is higher. So it's more intense than these other modes than we're used to. So we're used to sitting down with our phones and sending text to people, calling people, hollering out the window to people, right? But being on Zoom and having to be performing, looking at the camera, knowing that this person on the other end of the session, if you're an attendee, like I am in this case, is watching, that puts stress into the situation. And stress is debilitating. Stress is tiring. Stress creates fatigue. So one of the other things that came from the Psychology Today article that I read is that people said after the fact that they felt lonely and less connected on video chat. Yeah. So it actually increases loneliness because it, in an odd way, it reminds us of how it used to be and how we prefer it.
That is so interesting. So are you saying that, like, say that we are doing like a Zoom, like Thanksgiving dinner is coming up. So after that Zoom dinner, and we are actually feeling more exhausted and more like lonelier. So interesting.
It really is. Yeah. I think that, you know, if let's say you and I were in a classroom together, we were students in a classroom, and the teacher's at the front of the classroom in the, you know, pre-COVID days. So let's say we were taking a class at a university back in January of last year. It's perfectly acceptable, socially acceptable for me to turn to you if you're in the next seat and say, hey, I want to grab a cup of coffee after we eat. I mean, after this class, then maybe we grab a bite to eat. And for you to say, let me check my watch, let me check my phone. Yeah, I can do that, Chuck, that's fine. That's all cool. And we know that the instructor who sort of catches us doing that, she's going to look at us and think, okay, well, they're going to come back here in a second. They're going to come back to paying attention to me. So she's not worried about it. We're used to all that. But you put all of that online, and all of a sudden we've got this stressor of having to perform and not really feeling comfortable of being off camera. So it's socially unacceptable in a lot of meetings to turn off your video. So we really do feel like we're sort of cheated out of that human connection. This thing, I thought this was an interesting statement, is that online video calls on all of these platforms remind us of how far away that person is and how long it would be before we can hold them again. That's really sad when you think about it. I just real quick, I have a pair of grandsons that live 12 minutes from here. And I've seen them, I saw them on Father's Day and my birthday, walking outside with masks on, with them in their little red wagon. And just before that, before COVID hit, I was able to wrestle with them on the floor and play and laugh and read books to them and all that. So yeah, it increases loneliness.
Totally. I mean, if I
sadness.
can interrupt you for a second, reminds me, you know, when I was dating, me and my husband, sometimes we had to call each other over the phone or do like a video chat. I was like, oh wow, you're so far away from me, right, when I'm traveling. So it makes so much sense. And I love this really great comment from Quinn, one of my former students. Thank you for joining us live. Video calls actually affect your mental health. So just kind of follow up on what you shared with us, Chuck. So last week, I was able to attend Fast Company, their innovation festival. Yeah, it was really, really, really cool talking about innovation. So there was one session talking about Zoom, like online video conferencing calls. I was really surprised and now surprised to hear this. So when our faces are like close up to the camera, so this just doing this closer to the camera will actually cause the viewers enter a fight and flight state, and will make the viewer feel a lot more stressed and threatened, and will hurt their creativity and innovation and ability to be productive, to focus. I was like, oh my God, time to stay away from my camera. So that was really powerful based on what you shared with us earlier. Yeah,
no, that's really true. And so the staring thing where we're you know, as basically evolved from we're basically, you know, evolved from primates, and for primates, gaze is everything. So, I mean, since we were little kids, we were taught to either, try to, if we're being attacked by a dog, for instance, either look him in the eye or don't look him in the eye. I forget which one which the rule is. But that whole thing about being connected through staring and gazing is super draining. You're forced to share. It's harder to track all the nonverbal cues when you're glued to your camera. Again, because you can't turn your head and see the other people in the room. They're all in these little boxes.
Totally.
So interesting stuff.
Yeah, very, very interesting, right? Like you are actually forced to be alert all the time. So just like, listening to this conversation, so my natural response to this is, wow, if a video is so bad, can we just turn off our camera? And what are especially I heard this, being an educator, like many of my educator friends are actually telling me all of their students just like camera off. The teacher is like talking to him or herself like a monologue. But actually schools are giving students the option because of this physiological stress level, and students are like giving students the option to turn on and off the camera. So can you also share with us, right, what are the pros and cons in terms of the overall quality of an online video conferencing call if we turn off our camera?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like I'm going to give an answer that would be compatible with it if I were being interviewed on the Senate in a Senate chamber for a position, maybe on the Supreme Court. It depends is the answer. I feel very strongly that it's up to the rules of the road as dictated by the institution that we're talking about and by the facilitator, his or herself. Okay, so let's just take a classroom. I think you're exactly right. And again, with age groups, you've got to be age appropriate with what you can allow and disallow. If you realize that your students are being stressed by being on camera, then sure, relax and let them turn off their video so that they're not being watched. Of course, that means you don't know whether they're even there anymore. For grown-ups, quote unquote, I think we're in a different realm there, because if you're having a meeting, let's say you're the facilitator of a team of creatives in a digital marketing agency, and you send out an agenda, or through whatever communication method you use, you want to tell people what to expect on Tuesday at 3 when you have your regular stand-up meeting. Well, if I were the facilitator of that, I would say in the agenda, you must have your video on, because I need to see you. I need to be able to see what your reactions are. I need to be able to see whether or not I'm communicating with you, whether you're falling asleep, what are you doing? So, and again, that gets back to the stress that can induce. So there are other ways to deal with, long meetings. The answer is make them shorter. So it really does get down to rules that are set up by the facilitator and what the expectation is. And then I think also being flexible is a really good plan. So if somebody, again, in my model of a meeting with a bunch of creatives in a digital marketing agency, if a production manager that I have is not feeling that well, and she sends me a text or a chat in the sidebar on Zoom and says, look, I'm really not feeling that great. I just don't want to turn on my video. Well, of course not. Just relax. Let that be. So there is a little bit of going with the flow that I think is called for here.
Yeah, totally. And I love this comment again from McQueen. It is really interesting that during a video call that our body gesture, right, can actually affect the other person's like literally physical well-being. It is so fascinating. That is something I totally overlooked. I didn't know that before until I really tap into the science behind this. It was like, wow, it makes so much sense. Yeah. So so far we discussed quite a few problems, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
So can you also is there a way out? Can you share some strategies, ways that can make this less exhausting, more fun, more engaging? Not like, oh my God, another Zoom call, but actually, feeling excited. Yeah.
Yeah. what I'm going to share here is an overview, and it's mappable to a lot of instances. So just think about what I'm saying and map that to your particular thing. So if you're a student of, or if you're a teacher of K-5 age group, some of this stuff isn't going to apply. So this is general, but a lot of it does apply. So one of the top things that I suggest people do is that facilitators, and by that I mean anybody who's putting on a meeting, whether they're a trainer in a gym or whether they're a student or a teacher teaching a class or a facilitator in a meeting, running webinars, all of this comes down to planning. Facilitators really need to plan their meetings. Okay, so think about what you're trying to communicate. Try to figure out a way to condense it into the shortest amount of time possible. And then one key thing that I'm amazed that I don't think this is done as often as it could be is send out an agenda ahead of time. Tell people what to expect. I think to a certain extent, organizations do that natively for in-person meetings. But it applies, I think, even more for online Zoom calls because people need to know what to expect. So send it out 2 or 3 days in advance. Say what the meeting's about, what the purpose is, the goals, and that kind of thing, very short at the top. But then actually lay out individual time blocks. So we're going to start at 10, and then at 10:20, we're taking a 5-minute break. And at 10:30, we're going to do a stretch break. And at 10:40, and just really lay out exactly what's going to happen. Always leave time for Q&A at the end. So I think those are really good tips. The other thing too is try to use other technologies. If this is going to sound kind of counterintuitive for a guy who's training people about the use of Zoom, don't always use Zoom. Don't always go online. Don't always do a video conference with the people that you're trying to communicate with. Think about all the stuff that we had before we had Zoom, and we used those 2 trillion minutes back in April of this year. We had Slack, we had Asana, we had Trello, we had our phones, for crying out loud. We used to actually call people. We can text people. So look for ways to avoid Zoom. I know it sounds weird, right? But to prevent Zoom fatigue and to keep people engaged, go to the heavyweight modalities like Zoom and the other video conferencing platforms when it's appropriate and not otherwise.
Yeah, I love this. Actually, it reminds me again of this Fast Company that Zoom session. So they actually suggested just like actually call each other, and people can have the phone on the table. They can actually take notes. They can just be really in their pajamas and relax and focus. And doing that will actually help people focus, be more productive. So yeah, we don't always have to be on Zoom, right? Yeah. I so agree. Yeah. So here is a great comment from Hillary. Thank you for joining us live. And she loves the idea of getting an agenda. And so thanks for that reminder. What is a good way to request an agenda from the host of a meeting? I love this question because this is not how people default to before a Zoom meeting. So what is a really nice way, professional way to actually request for an agenda? Any tips?
Yeah, I would just ask. I honestly, I think, you could phrase an email or a text message with an opening to just say something like, "Hey, Sally, I understand we've got a meeting coming up on Tuesday. Because this is such a new world for all of us, we're trying to get used to it. Would you mind sharing what your plan for the meeting is, just so we all know what to expect?" So maybe it's an agenda, just kind of be direct, but you could beat around the bush a little bit. You don't want to put Sally or your boss on the defensive, but in all likelihood, she probably hasn't even thought of it. So my answer would be, go ahead and bring it up.
Totally. And I mean, like, if I'm having a meeting with my boss, if I see the agenda, I know, from 10 to 10:10, I'm expected to talk. So that, and then outside that 10 minutes, I can feel to be relaxed, right? I don't have to be like alert. Am I going to be called all the time? Again, you will enter that fight flight state. So I love that.
Yeah.
Great idea. So besides, planning and any other additional tips, and my immediate question is, how long should those meetings be? Because traditionally, face-to-face meeting is typically 1 hour, right? If like 30 minutes is really short.
Yeah.
And so, like, is there an ideal length that people feel less exhausting and miserable, or like we keep the same length?
Yeah, I think it gets back to what's required to communicate the information that you need to communicate. So again, if you can think about it, like how much of what I need to say to my team or my students needs to be said over a video conference, and how much of it could I put into an email, and how much of it could I put into other modes of communication? You could probably strip that meeting down to 40 minutes instead of an hour. It's interesting that the free accounts on Zoom cut off at 40 minutes. So maybe they based that cutoff period on how long meetings really should take. I'm not sure if that's the case or not. So, but I think as much as anything, it's breaking up the meetings. If you really do need to go an hour, then don't, for heaven's sake, don't wait beyond 20 minutes to take a break. And just tell people, just sit in your chair and stretch. Just okay. Look, everybody. I want everybody to stretch. Okay. Look. Okay. How far into this meeting are we? We're right at the half hour mark.
Half an hour. Stretch time, everybody.
Everybody stretch, right? It feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels good. So, yeah, right. I would say at the 20-minute mark and at the 40-minute mark, if you're going for an hour, make sure you're calling for a stretch or taking a break. People need to use the restroom. They might want to go get a glass of water. So just go ahead and honor that human need. One of the interviews that we did that's on our blog.
Make sure to turn off your camera when you go use the bathroom.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the folks that we interviewed is you and I both know Kathy Klote's guest. She is an improv trainer and trains over Zoom now, where she used to go into organizations and do it in person. She has a lot of tips about this, but on our blog, if people want to go read it, she talks about making sure you're paying attention to human energy. So you can do more in the meeting in the morning on Zoom than you can at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? It just makes so much more sense that that you catch people right after their second cup of coffee. They're raring to go. They're in their seats and they're paying attention. So try not to plan a Zoom meeting for 1 p.m. if lunch was from 12 to 1. Especially if you're trying to communicate a whole bunch of really important information, because people are kind of like this after lunch. They just, energy's down. So as she said, go with the flow of human energy.
Yeah, I love that. I think this also means that we need to really cultivate our emotional intelligence, right? I think research has already shown that people who have, especially leaders, who have high EQ level, they are more likely to succeed and become successful in the long run. And I think with everything happening through Zoom or a different online medium, and I think we really need to pay more attention to those like facial cues, emotional cues, reading people's verbal, nonverbal language. And I think that is like even more important. And I also want to add what you said earlier, reducing on Zoom meetings reminds me of another article I read. I think it was probably from Fast Company saying that with this like explosion of Zoom meetings, there is actually a significant increase in 20-minute meetings and a
really?
decrease, a big level decrease in hour-long meetings. So now meetings are 20 minutes. People actually love it, right? Just like, let's dive in. What do we need to talk about? So I love that. You're very, very interesting. Yeah.
Well, one tip that I picked up from you, when we were doing the interview in reverse, I believe you were talking about how, as a teacher, rather than just getting your kids on the other side of their computers and reading to them like you might in class, because you've got, a 40-minute class, 50-minute class, and you want to read a lesson or write on the board, give them an assignment ahead of time. And this would map to an adult meeting as well. Give them something to do ahead of time, and then use the meeting time to go over it.
Yeah.
I learned that from you, and I thought that was such a great idea. And that's just a fantastic way to because people, we're up at all kinds of crazy hours. A lot of us can't sleep at night, So if I had an assignment from you as a teacher or as my facilitator, my boss, and you needed me to put something together, and we were just going to have a 20-minute meeting instead of an hour-long meeting, I'm much more up for that.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Thank you for mentioning that, because my rule of thumb for using like online meetings is like, I typically don't teach during the meetings, and whatever I need to teach, I will pre-record videos that the people can watch, when they're eating or laying down, whatever. But like Zoom meetings, I think are best used for like discussion, like having a conversation, hot seat, Q&A, and I think that is more interesting and more beneficial to both parties. Yeah. So here is a great comment from a Queen. He was talking about, how when you're on a Zoom meeting, if one person is doing something very disruptive, that can affect the entire Zoom meeting. Whereas in the old in-person situations, if one person was being very disruptive, it's not really going to affect the entire class or the entire meeting. But online, everything is allowed to more amplify, right? Like, oh, wow, on that big screen, there's this person, doing something. Yeah.
That actually happened it's a really interesting point. That happened in a tutorial that I was taking from it was a live Zoom that I was taking from a colleague of mine. And there were probably about 8 of us in the Zoom call. And all of a sudden, someone on the Zoom call got a phone call, okay? So all of a sudden, you could hear her going, holy cow, I haven't heard from you in 12, has it been 12 years already? And anyway, she was like hollering into her phone, but of course her audio was coming through to the Zoom. And the facilitator was like, for a second, and then we're all like, okay, just mute her. Just, cut her off, like put her back in the waiting room, because you can do that. If somebody's completely disruptive on Zoom, I don't know about the other, it just, it's like timeout. And if you can't hear me say that it's time for you to take a timeout, I'm going to put you in timeout. But anyway, it was really pretty funny. Everybody thought it was pretty funny when it was all over with. But that was unnerving.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And now I feel bad. Like, I remember one time my 6-year-old, he's taking he has been taking quite a few online classes, even though we homeschool them. And one time I noticed he was taking class without his shirt on. He's like shirtless. I felt so embarrassed. I just snitching. I was like, put on this shirt. He didn't even realize that. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, I can only imagine like 20 minutes into his class, how distracted everybody was, especially the teacher must be thinking, what's wrong with his parents? Yeah. But really, really interesting. Yeah. So any other additional tips you want to share with us before we dive into another segment? Like, we cannot talk about camera, don't be so close, and like a video conference lens. Oh yeah. How about certain nonverbal and verbal cues that we need to do more of, or maybe less of, through the online medium?
Yeah, well, we can talk a little bit about the importance of things like audio and lighting here in a second. But in terms of things you can do, let's get into how to keep people engaged. Right. So going back to this interview that we did with Kathy Klote's guest, when she teaches online, she has her attendees do something every 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes, she has them do something. Now, as a teacher with Classroom Without Walls, you probably are that creative as well. But I think without training, a lot of facilitators don't know to do that. So they just drone on and that kind of thing. But what Kathy does is she'll ask a yes or no question, and she'll say, just go ahead and drop yes or no in the chat. And then she'll respond to those. She'll say, oh yeah, I see Sally here said yes to that question. Well, and then that may take her off into a tangent in that direction. The other thing that she'll do, and I thought this was fascinating, is on Zoom, you can change your name, the name that appears on the screen. So every 5 minutes, she'll have them do something. One of the things that she has them do is change their name to reflect how they're feeling. So, that's a cue from the facilitator to the participant, to the attendee, to do something and stay engaged. As far as the verbal and nonverbal cues go, I think and again, going back to something I learned from you, that especially with kids, be active, ask them for a clap, right? You can take this part of the interview if you want. What do you do to keep especially the little guys engaged?
I mean, I just love all the tips you shared with us so far. I think changing our names is such a great idea. And even in alignment with that, we can always change our background. So it's birthday, right? Celebrate birthday, or we can have a theme this month or this week. We are traveling to Africa, right? So everyone can find something really cool, representative of Africa. And also, I think another is for teachers or for whoever is doing lead or host a Zoom call. I think being a good public speaker is really important. After I remember a few years ago, I watched this TED Talk. So this person said that he refused to watch or listen or go to a talk if the speaker is not sweating by the end of the talk, right? So I think that is a great way to think about how much energy, right? If you are just a monotone, flat, that is going to put everybody into sleep, especially in the afternoon, right? So besides breaks, use our body. I think it's almost like performing. Do you feel
it is.
Right, just in theater on stage, you are a little bit overly dramatic, right? In real life, I don't always talk like this, but because on Zoom, people only see this part of me. So I definitely rely a lot on open my eyes, showing surprise, and rely a lot on my nonverbal gestures to convey a meaning, showing I'm making sense, giving nonverbal cues to the speaker. I think doing that is a lot more important. Through the online medium.
Yeah, that's really great. That is great. And the other thing too is that if people haven't upgraded to Zoom 5.0 or 5.x, make sure that you go into your Zoom account. If you have a paid account, you can just go to zoom.us or zoom.com and make sure that you've downloaded the most recent version of it. For one thing, it's more feature rich. And the other thing is that the security is totally in place now. They had a 90-day run up to 256-bit end-to-end encryption, and they've achieved that now. So that's a good thing. I feel like that they're having 5.0 also gives you the ability to use more reactions. The reactions are a thing on Zoom, right? So when they first came out, I think there was just the hand clap and what was the other one? Thumbs up or something like that. But now there's a whole raft of them. You can also, as an attendee, you can also signal the facilitator to slow down. You can say, please speed up because you're bored. Anyway, Zoom is constantly evolving. And so I think it's a really great idea to download that and make sure you're using the latest.
Yeah, I love that. I think in terms of emojis, I speak with emojis.
Yeah.
I think there's a reason that those emojis are called emojis because they really evoke emotions. And So every time when I use that with my students all the time. Hey, how are you feeling so far? Thumbs up or clapping or falling asleep. Yeah. And also they have that survey pooling feature and breakout rooms, all those things. Yeah. And there's also that whiteboard. Do you use that feature?
Yeah, we're teaching that. I don't personally use it that often myself, but yeah, those are really great points. And that also helps defeat Zoom fatigue, because if you're just sitting there droning on and talking, that's one thing. If you add in slides, of course, you can share your screen and take people through a slide deck. That's fine. But if you can also put in polls and breakout rooms and webinars, then you've got that much more that you can work with. Webinars, by the way, do cost extra. If you've got a $16 a month account, they'll add $40, for the ability to conduct webinars. And if you dive into the technology, and we do teach that in our online video mastery class, there's a lot to webinars. They're not like falling off a log. They're not hard, but they take a little bit more effort. Same thing with breakout rooms, but breakout rooms are really great because they're breakout rooms. I don't know how many folks on this call have gone to an initial setup meeting for at the beginning of a school year, for instance. When I was working at the University of Virginia, at the Women's Center, we would have a big meeting at the beginning of the year so that all the students could get to know the faculty and that kind of thing. And I was a contractor there teaching communications. And so we would have breakout rooms. Everybody would be dealing with a particular topic, or everybody had the same set of questions that they had to answer. So this little group went to this part of the room and this little group to this part of the room. And they came back after they'd done their homework, and then somebody reported out to the group what we had discussed in our breakout room. Well, breakout rooms are amazing because you can put a facilitator into each room so she can conduct what needs to be done. You can set the breakout room to break up in 10 or 15, 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then everybody's automatically brought back to the lobby, so to speak, or the main meeting room. So you can send messages out to the breakout room. So that's a terrific way. So I really do suggest that people look into breakout rooms as a way to defeat Zoom fatigue, and also to use polls, because you can do those either on the fly, or you can set those up ahead of time through you just need to initiate it in your Zoom account, and you can create your questions there or on the fly. So pretty cool stuff.
And you can automatically assign people to different breakout rooms, or you can assign, those two people, they never talk, I want to assign them into the same room.
Yeah.
And I love breakout rooms also for another reason, because, I just, in the traditional meeting, environment, face-to-face meeting environment, I can always have chit chat with my neighbors, not necessarily having a conversation with the big boss. So I feel like doing breakout rooms feels a lot safer and intimate. Hey, this is our small team that we can actually talk about, gossip a little bit, so to speak. I think that makes me feel safer. I think also psychologically, right, we are more intimate group. So I love that. I love breakout rooms. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Excellent. So here's a great comment again from Hillary, and she said that she has never used one before and haven't been in a meeting where has been used. Yeah. So send this video to your team, and so they can use some great tips, right? It is so powerful. Can you imagine just looking at one talking head all the time? I'm like, no.
Yeah, no.
I can't do that. Yeah. So we're just wrapping up here. And you have, as I mentioned earlier, Chuck, you have this online video mastery course. So first, tell us a little bit more about this course, what is included, and who is this a course for, and just give us more information.
Sure, happy to do that. Going back to that Glen Echo Park model that I started out talking about, we spent a lot of time. My co-developer, Dana Mook, is on this call, and she and I did a deep dive into Zoom. She wrote a whole lot of the content, and I'm very grateful to her for doing that. We stood that training up in about 2.5 or 3 weeks because there was such a terrific need for it. And not wanting to let it go to waste, it occurred to us, wow, we could take these modules and formalize them more and turn them into a course that we could sell to other organizations. So online video mastery is a set of modules. There are 8 modules. We've written 7, and we're working on the 8th one. And these things, the modules go from everywhere from getting started for real basic beginners. And believe it or not, there's still people out there who really can't even spell Zoom yet. They're need to learn how to do it. Yeah, thank you for sharing our home screen. If you want to, you could scroll down to our training section, which is a little bit further down. And that lists the modules that you can keep on going down a little bit further. There's a headline that says our training. So it's down a little bit more right there. Yeah. So what separates us from a lot of other trainings that are out there? Not only do we have these modules, which are asynchronous modules, and for people who are not familiar with that terminology, asynchronous just means that it's a recorded video and you can watch it at any time. We've made the videos snackable, so they're 3 to 5 minutes long, even within a module. So in some cases, a module might be a total of 15, 20 minutes long, but we've broken it up to make it easy for people to take a look at and consume. So we cover everything from getting started to keeping meetings secure, to best practices. Yeah, you can see those bullet points right there: scheduling the meeting, running a meeting, best practices for professional meetings. This is something that we really do harp on, and that's the whole thing about the importance of audio, the importance of lighting, and generally best practices for keeping people engaged by having a professional appeal. So we don't want to have people show up in their PJs. So the other thing that distinguishes us from other trainings out there are 2 things. One is that our training is brandable. We will brand it for an organization. So if, let's say, we had an organization, a nonprofit, who was interested in our training, then we would brand each of the modules to make that more appealing to the constituents that are watching the modules. And the other thing that we do that's different from a lot of other organizations is we do one-on-one coaching calls. We are going to have open office hours, and basically, in a nutshell, we're going to customize what an organization needs. We're going to customize what we offer to what an organization needs, and that's what online video mastery is all about, and in a nutshell.
That sounds exciting. I mean, I'm an advocate that learning has to be personal. I think that's why I left, the traditional higher education environment, because learning is highly impersonal. It's mass production, and that's why it's not working. So I love how you are doing this, really custom design and coaching. Great. So I already shared the website, and maybe you can repeat the link again, Chuck, and I will also make sure to share this on the screen. And also, by the way, if you guys want to stay updated on future guests and topics, and so feel free, please join my newsletter, classroomwithoutwords.ai, and I don't spam. I will keep you updated. Yeah, so Chuck, share with us.
Yeah, so just a couple of things. I just want to put a big red underline under a piece of parting advice for everyone here. And that is to relax, okay? Life is short. Let's be kind to each other. We're all getting used to this insane new world that we're in. And I just want to make sure that we're being nice to each other and just keep calling on our creativity and keep moving forward, looking for new ways to communicate, stay up with the technology, stay up with techniques. So anyone who is involved with our ecosystem, if you will, through Online Video Mastery. People can go to onlinevideomastery.com and download that our ebook. That will get you onto our email list, and we'll try to keep you up to date. But I feel like we're creating a neighborhood, and I really feel extremely excited about that. So yes, onlinevideomastery.com. Get your Smart Facilitator's Guide to Crushing Zoom Fatigue. And also, just real quick, I wanted to say that anyone on this call that is interested in a free Zoom audit, I'm going to be doing 3 of these a day, perhaps. I may be able to get 3 a day in. They'll last about 10 or 15 minutes, so they'll be pretty quick. But I'll be happy to do those for free. So just head on over to onlinevideomastery.com and fill out the discovery call form. And when I get that, I'll reach back out to you and see if a Zoom audit is something that you're interested in. And then we'll just have a little coaching call. So that'll be free, and I'm happy to offer that to eyes participants on this call.
Thank you so much. And also on the screen, I'm sharing Chuck's LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with him and definitely take advantage of those free Zoom sessions, coaching calls. Yeah. And anything else? I know you already said relax. Anything else before we say goodbye to our friends?
I think that's it. I just really, really, really appreciate the opportunity to chat with your followers today. I've gotten a lot from you, and I really appreciate the energy and the technique and the smarts that you bring to everything that you do. Yeah, I really do. And so I'm proud to be part of your neighborhood as well. So thank you very much for inviting me here today. I've really enjoyed my time with everybody.
Oh, thank you so much, Chuck. And as always, everyone feel free to follow our guest. And this show is on every Wednesday, the same time, same location. For some of you, it is a Thursday. So I hope to see you again next week, same time and same location here. And thank you so much for joining us live from all over the globe. And thank you so much, Chuck, for dropping so much value. And I hope to see you all again next week. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.